And of course, I want to thank the Southwest Louisiana Juneteenth Committee for their leadership in coordinating all of the many Juneteenth activities held in Lafayette Parish this year. Let's give the SWLA Juneteenth Committee a huge round of applause. I see Susanna here. Thank you so much for the work that you've done. It's exciting to see so much happening around Juneteenth. I don't remember it being this way not long ago. So raise your hand if you attended at least two Juneteenth events this year. How many? At least two. That's fantastic. Okay, now keep your hand up if you attended at least 3 events this year. That's fantastic. And finally, keep your hand up if you attended 4 or more Juneteenth events this year. Amazing. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for contributing to making Juneteenth such a success this year. Move the Mindset believes it's important to remember Juneteenth each year. Juneteenth represents the unvanquishable spirit of freedom and the tenacity to fight for it by any means possible. So tonight we celebrate the freedom fighters who made Juneteenth and the end of slavery in this nation possible. We also celebrate those who came after them and fought against Jim Crow slavery, and those who continue to fight today against forms of institutional and systemic racism so that one day we can achieve the dream of racial and social justice. Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it, right? We all know that phrase. And that's part of the reason why we celebrate Juneteenth, right? It's so very important that we celebrate Juneteenth, but we also need to teach its history and its meaning to our children, correct? Right? I was at the Juneteenth story yesterday. How many of you attended the Juneteenth story? Okay. And, a big theme there are lots of themes in that play, but one of them is just the vital importance of spreading the knowledge of Juneteenth and its meaning from generation to generation to generation, right? To keep that hope and dream alive. Well, that's why I believe today we have lots of folks who are busy out there organizing to erase this history, right? To censor this history, to remove it from the textbooks. And I think you all know what I'm talking about. Censorship, banning books, this is a huge problem today. I think that the forces of oppression are busy fighting this culture war against anti-racist histories and theories because they're afraid of where that can take us in the next generation, in the future, right? They don't want that victory to happen. And these same people, by the way, are also busy banning books about LGBTQ issues and lifestyles, right? We have a same enemy, same fight type situation here. And we cannot let them win. And that's a reason why we continue to celebrate Juneteenth and to spread the word about what this means. Well, I want to talk about a specific instance of censorship around anti-racist, let's say, literature in this case. Recently, you may have heard about a Florida school that decided to restrict access to a poem by Amanda Gorman. This poem was read at the inaugural address of President Biden. It's called The Hill We Climb. How many of you are aware of the poem and of its banning at this institution? To be accurate, they've restricted access to the children. Now, why? Why don't they want children reading a poem? What are they afraid of, right? This poem talks about how we need a more perfect union, right? And that means it touches on the fact that our history is not perfect. It's imperfect. There are lots of examples of racism, of oppression, of injustice, and we continue to fight against those forces so that we can create a more perfect union. And that is a laudable thing, I think. And that's why I think that not only should that poem not be banned, and poems like it, and books like it, but we should celebrate those poems. And so tonight, for the rest of my period here to talk, I want to dedicate what I have left here to read that poem, just to recite that poem. This is a safe space, free of censorship. Here we celebrate the freedom fighters that are alluded to in that poem. So here we go. Ready? How many of you have read the poem before? Okay, fantastic. Hopefully you'll find it inspirational. This is The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. Again, delivered at the inauguration of President Joseph R. Biden, January 20th, 2021. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We brave the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl, descended from slaves and raised by a single mother, can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gaze not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say, this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious. Not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promise to Glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare. It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy, and this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour. But within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation, become the future. Our blunders become their burdens. I love that line. But one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. Every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the golden hills of the West. We will rise from the windswept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When days come, we step out of the shade of flame, and unafraid, the new dawn blooms as if we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it. Thank you. Let us take inspiration from Amanda Gorman's poem and in her own words, leave behind a country better than the one we were left. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the program.
Thank you, Frank. Next, we will have our Vice President, Ms. Ola Prejon, to come up, and she will get us informed about the Equal Justice Initiative. Ola?
Good evening. It is so great to see all of you here this evening. And as I was watching the hands go up for the number of events that you have already participated in and witnessed on this Juneteenth, and the fact that you have chosen to come another night to hear more information and to get become more informed and just commemorate this event is really, really, really special to us. So I want to echo Frank in welcoming you here this evening. You know, just as the enslaved in Texas didn't know for 2 years about the Emancipation Proclamation having been signed, there are so many other events in our history that we have little or no knowledge about. And as Frank mentioned, if we continue the course that our country is going on now, those things that we know about today, future generations may not have a chance to know them as we do if those bans are put in place. So we certainly have to work against that happening. But one of the history lessons that a lot of us don't know about or know about in small bits and pieces has to do with the history of lynching, terror lynching. There are very few monuments or memorials that address the history of lynching, and most of those victims have never been identified or even publicly acknowledged. To commemorate and to recognize the trauma of era of lynching, the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, launched the Community Remembrance Project, which is a national lynching memorialization effort. EJI identified more than 400 African Americans in this country that were lynched from 1877 through 1950. Of these, EJI identified 549 lynching victims in Louisiana, and of those, 6 individuals in Lafayette Parish. The Community Remembrance Project of Lafayette Parish began in October 2018 when my late husband, Fred Prejon, when he served as president of Move the Mindset, thought it was important for the citizens of Lafayette to know this history and to acknowledge the victims of these horrific events. And in true Fred Prejon fashion, he organized a meeting, formed the EJI committee, and set about the work of bringing the Community Remembrance Project to Lafayette Parish. And with his co-liaison, Ian Beamish, and 15 other organizations joining on, the Community Remembrance Project of Lafayette Parish began. The Community Remembrance Project has opportunities that include the Community Soil Collection Project, the Historical Marker Project, and the Racial Justice Essay Contest. The initial memorialization to pay tribute to the victims of lynching is done through soil collection ceremonies. Soil samples are collected from the municipalities where the lynching occurred and placed in 2 large jars with the victim's name and date of death engraved on each. One jar is kept locally, and the other is displayed at EJI's Legacy Museum in Montgomery. As I always do, I acknowledge the names of the victims and the terror that they suffered. These stories are hard to tell, they are painful to hear, but they must be told and they must be heard. In April 1878, a mob of at least 5 people lynched an unidentified African American man in Lafayette Parish. The unidentified man was found hanging in the neighborhood of Royville, which is today known as Youngsville. On September 9th, 1889, Rosemond Cormier, an African American man, and his 15-year-old daughter, Rosalie Cormier, were murdered near their home on Abbeville Road. On the evening of July 19, 1895, a white mob murdered Ovid Belizaire, a black man in his 40s, inside his own home in Youngsville. On Tuesday, March 24, 1896, Louis Sinclair was taken from jail in Carencro by a group of white men. He was never seen again. And although Anton Domingue was known as a peaceable black man, he was lynched on November 24, 1906 in Carencro. Those are the stories of the 6 victims that EJI has identified from Lafayette Parish. We have held soil collection ceremonies for each of these 6 victims. If you haven't already done so, I hope you will take time to visit the exhibits of the ceremonies. The collections have previously been exhibited at Louisiana Avenue United Methodist Church and First Presbyterian Church. The stories and soil collection jars from the ceremonies of Louis Sinclair and Anton Domingue are exhibited here tonight. So please, if you didn't have a chance to stop by on your way in, look at that and read their stories. Soil collection jars and stories of Rosemont Cormier and his daughter Rosalie are currently exhibited at Maison Freetown. Thank you, Erica, for hosting our jars. And collection jars and stories of Ovid Belizaire and the unidentified individual are currently on exhibit at ULL's Dupree Library. If you happen to know of a church or another location that might be an appropriate site to host exhibits, I'd love to arrange it. We would like our community at large to know about these stories. Now that the community soil collection project has been completed, the next phase is the historical marker project, which involves erecting narrative markers in public locations to create greater awareness and understanding about racial terror lynching. We have obtained a verbal commitment from Mayor President Guillory to have a memorial marker acknowledging the trauma suffered by the 6 Lafayette Parish victims placed at Lafayette Consolidated Government. We are working through the process with the administration to create a solemn space that will promulgate honesty, healing, and racial reconciliation. As a component of the historical marker project, students in grades 9 through 12 will have an opportunity to participate in the racial justice essay contest. Students will be challenged to write an essay that reflects on historical events and connects it to present-day issues of their lived experience. And this contest will be open to all students in Lafayette Parish High Schools, and the winners will have a chance to receive scholarships and awards. And trust me, those essays will not be banned, and we will see that they live on in Lafayette Parish. As we all know, we cannot go back and undo the past. But as we learn about the past, we also learn from the past. And that knowledge helps us navigate our present and chart our course for the future. As Maya Angelou wrote, history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. So I invite you, as Fred would say, to join Move the Mindset and become a change agent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ola. You know, as I look back on January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared all enslaved persons within rebellious states free. Just wrap your mind around that. 1863. And you're in Texas. You're free. Now, oftentimes we hear about individuals in Texas not knowing they was free. As I stand here, I find that hard to believe. You might not have known about it for a week. You might not have known about it for a month, maybe even a couple months. But sometime within that 2-year period, I think a lot of those individuals knew that they was free. They wanted to leave. But you know, they continued to be held in brutal bondage for 2 years. And while I am appreciative, whenever the Union General Gordon Granger arrived and read the Emancipation Proclamation that they were free, I just stand here, I just wonder, what took so long in this United States of America? The president ordered it 2 years earlier. Mind-boggling. But next, our next speaker is Mr. Ravis Martinez, who's the president of the NAACP. Would you come up, Mr. Ravis? He's president of NAACP Lafayette Chapter 6060.
All right, thank you. Thank you guys for having me this evening. So again, my name is Ravis K. Martinez, and I'm honored to speak to you this evening as we celebrate the oldest African-American holiday out of all the holidays created by African-Americans. This is the only holiday that has survived slavery times, and I'm happy that we are celebrating today. See, today we are reflecting on the struggles and the sacrifices of our ancestors who endured unimaginable hardships in their fight for liberation. We honor their resilience, their courage, and their unwavering determination to secure a better future for generations to come. Juneteenth reminds us of the indomitable spirit of those who fought against oppression and their refusal to accept anything less than their inherent right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You see, Juneteenth, it commemorates the anniversary of Major General Granger's order proclaiming freedom for African American slaves in Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. However, we know that even after the Civil War and the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, within a decade, our country saw the return of white supremacy and the rolling back of the rights of African Americans that had gained through the Reconstruction era. For roughly 50 years, African Americans had to endure a period of pronounced legalized discrimination, violence, and other expressions of white supremacy. We ushered in the Civil Rights Movement, and with it, the end of separate but equal doctrine. Legally eradicating racial segregation. We passed the Civil Rights Acts, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act. We ratified the 24th Amendment and witnessed the establishment of the Civil Rights Division within the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Commission of Civil Rights and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. But during that same period, we witnessed the assassination of Medgar Evers, Chauncey Goodman Sherman, Martin Luther King Jr., and Bobby Kennedy. We saw the rise of the Black Power movement and the Black race consciousness in all of its forms. But we also saw the assassination of Malcolm X and Fred Hampton. See, affirmative action also came, but so too did the racial dog whistling politics and racial regressive politics of President Nixon and Reagan. We did elect our first Black president, Barack Obama, but he too experienced unprecedented assassination threats for a president. And he put in motion the desire among many white Americans to take their country back. And in some respects, they did when we elected Donald Trump, who was promising to make America great again. Even right here in our own state and local communities, we have seen organized efforts to silence the voices of those who are working to bring quality health care, safe and sanitary housing, equal pay for women, increase investments in education and job training, and we've seen efforts to halt redistricting efforts. We also see examples of police misconduct, both at our state and in local agencies. We've seen attempts to ban books and to control a woman's right to choose, while also we're seeing attempts to rewrite history as we know it. See, over the arc of history, there's been this push of progress and then this pull of retreatment. There's been a surge of hope and then a tug of fear. We are at a moment in our country's history where we must decide who we want to be. We must decide who we want to be. You see, beyond the history and the rhetoric, do we want to truly be a bulwark against the forces of white supremacy and value? Do we want to give our time, our talent, and our treasures to the cause of justice and equality? As a people, we were a transformational community of race men and women during the mid-20th century. Do we have the will again? I know that we can be, but we must decide. And we must decide soon. It is time for us to pivot to the substantive policy issues that are confronting African Americans in America in general, like voting rights, making sure that we protect and expand the right to vote, or police reform to ensure that the horrific scenes that we have seen in our state and local police departments are held accountable. Those are just a few of the substantive issues, not to mention the creating a fair and open system to allow for business and industry to partner with our underserved community to help bring jobs, safe and sanitary housing, and also create communities that are safe, that are clean, and a place that we can all call home. As I close for the first time, I'm optimistic, and I'm reminded of the words of Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, the world is all messed up. The nation is sick. Trouble is in the land. Confusion is all around. And he said, I know that's a strange statement, but I know somehow that only when it's dark enough that you can see the stars. And I see God working in this period of the 21st century in the way that men are responding. Something is happening in our world. The masses of people are rising up wherever they are assembled, whether they are in Johannesburg, South Africa, Nairobi, Kenya, Accra, Ghana, New York City, Jackson, Mississippi, or right here in Lafayette, Louisiana. The cry is the same. We want freedom. We want to be free. The legacy of slavery and the systematic racism continues to shape our society today. While progress has been made, the fight for true equality and justice is far from over. We must confront the persistent disparities that plague our education system, plague our criminal justice system, our healthcare system, and countless other aspects of our society. Juneteenth is not only a celebration, it's a call to action. It is a reminder that we must remain vigilant in our pursuit of equality and justice for all. We must dismantle the structures that perpetrate discrimination and exclusion. We must work tirelessly to eradicate systematic racism in all its forms and ensure that every individual, regardless of their race or ethnicity, can fully realize their potential and enjoy the same opportunities and privileges as their fellow citizens. The mission of the NAACP has always been to achieve equality, political rights, and social inclusion by advancing policies and practices that expand human and civil rights, eliminate discrimination, and accelerate the well-being, the education, and economic security of Black people and all people of color. This work continues today. As we commemorate Juneteenth, let us rededicate ourselves to the principles of equality, justice, and freedom. Let us come together as a nation, transcending our differences, and work collaboratively to build a society that upholds the dignity and worth of every individual. Let us amplify the voices of those who have been marginalized and silenced for too long. And let us strive for a future where the color of one's skin is no longer determining their destiny. In the spirit of Juneteenth, let us continue to march towards a more inclusive, equitable, and just society. Let us draw strength from the struggles and victories of the past to shape the future that every American can truly live in freedom. As I close for the final time, I want to leave the youth. I want to leave the youth in the audience with the poem by William Ernest Henley. It's titled Invictus. And it says, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud, but under bloodiness of chance, my head is bloodied, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the minutes of the years finds me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged the punishment to scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Thank you, and may we find inspiration and unity in Juneteenth.
Yeah, you know, this is an election year. And one thing we have to do, we have to get out and vote. But before you can vote, you must register. There's a lot of stuff happening out there that we can help to change. The power of the ballot is still powerful. Sometimes we get upset, and I remember like President Barack Obama said, don't boo, vote. Don't get mad, vote. And at this time in the program, it's time for one big applause. And this big applause is for you, the audience. This is a very great turnout today. I see. Thank you all so much for being here. Next, we're going to have a performance by Herb Poochie Green in the Poochie Percussions. A little bit about Herb Poochie Green. Herb Green directs a drumming program referred to as Poochie Percussions. The program targets youth, boys and girls that are considered at risk. He teaches the art of hand percussions and instills discipline and self-awareness. Encourage each student at least try. Poochie Percussions have performed across the state, participated in the docu-film The Creole Nutcracker. They have also performed at the Black History Museum in Monroe, Louisiana, and most recently, April of 2023, performed in New York City. Let's give them a round of applause. So y'all up, Mr. Poochie.
been a while, and I obey the 3-year-old Catholic privileges. It's a distinct pleasure and honor to pay it forward to young kids from North Lafayette, because I had countless men in my life that poured into me, that invested in me, that didn't lie to me, that kept it 100, like they say now. I have a platform now, and I use my platform effectively to reach these kids and to tell them the truth, and to sharpen their eyes, not just their minds, but to watch out for people who are deceitful, who will use them, who will deny them access to the things that make them better. And when they get denied those things, they become bitter. And when they become bitter, they become reactionary. And when they become reactionary, we see them on the camera, and we don't see them in a good light. So if we have an opportunity to invest in these kids, they'll become better. Our neighborhoods will become better. Our communities will become better. Our state will become better. Our country will become better. So, and I say those things because I've experienced oppression and racism firsthand. And in the 60 years that I've lived, I refuse to give up. I refuse to be denied. I refuse to be told that I can't when I know that I can't. I refuse to be left out, overlooked. You don't see me. And come October, you're going to hear me. And you're going to hear me use my voice to speak out against those people who don't mean our community any good. Keep kids in a positive way.
Okay, moving along in our program, our next speaker will be Miss Judy Daniel. A little bit about Judy before she comes up. Judy Watson Daniel is a retired Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Enrollment Services at LSU in Eunice. And LSU in Eunice just happened to be my old alma mater. During her career, she served in various positions: program facilitator, assistant dean of students at UL, becoming the first Black administrator in that area of the university. Additionally, she served as dean of students at Nicholls State University and later named assistant to the vice president of student affairs at Nicholls. After retiring in 2016, Judy became a founding member of Women of Wisdom, commonly referred to as WOW, and focused on educational improvement and community service. She is also a treasurer in the National Association of University Women, and she also is a member of various organizations around the community. In 2021, Judy was honored with the Trailblazers Award during the United Way of Acadiana's Women Who Mean Business Awards program. Ms. Judy Daniels.
Thanks for that wonderful introduction. The introduction was almost as long as my speech. But I am the elder. I'm the senior here. I looked at the program and I saw that every single person on the program is younger than me. I was an old lady out of college by the time this man and Herb and everybody else. So as the elder, I will use my privilege to ask you to please listen and follow suit. Your elders are speaking. And thanks, Herb, for what you contribute to the community. That special contribution, we really appreciate it. And you're a hard act to follow. I want to thank the Mindset Committee for inviting me to share a message on behalf of Women of Wisdom of Acadiana, commonly known as WOW. Some of us are here tonight with our pens. Would some of the members who are here please stand? Because the ladies in WOW, I see Amy Trahan, Angela Morrison, Julie LaFleur, and Mary Lib and Clancy. All of them are involved in WOW. And I'm here tonight on behalf of our president, Phyllis Mouton, who's out of town with her family. But she sends her greetings and support for the mission and goals of Move the Mindset. Thank you all for organizing this wonderful event. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen and children, for being here tonight. This is a wonderful turnout. As has been mentioned, we celebrate the freeing of slaves in Texas 2 whole years after they were freed, just because the people in power in Texas at the time chose not to acknowledge, let alone enforce, the Emancipation Proclamation. It took a Union Army to come into Texas to dismantle the system of bondage for slaves who should have been freed so much earlier so they could move on and make choices in their lives. Just imagine for yourself if you were denied 2 years of progress, 2 years of choice. Think about something you want to do, whether it's to see your child graduate from high school or college, and you had to say, no, son or daughter, you have to wait 2 years. You want to get married? No, you have to wait 2 years. You want to get a job? There's a prospect out there waiting for you. No, it's not available to you. You have to wait 2 years. You've been in the workforce for 40 or 50 years. You want to retire. And it's, no, you got to work 2 more years. You have to wait. So can you imagine what that feels like if you have to wait on a dream? Talk about dreams deferred. I can't even imagine what that must feel like. But as was said earlier, how could you exist in America in 1863 and by 1865 when a law is in place, not know or not have the ability or the opportunity to be free? Because there's a national law, there's a federal law signed by the President of the United States saying you're free, but you're not. That perplexes me always. Unfortunately, it's not uncommon in our American history. The disregard for law became and has always been a pattern response. Just look at our experiences and consider things like school integration and that legacy, housing and job access, and various other efforts over the decades to expand diversity, equity, and inclusion. Even when there's a federal law, even when the courts make a decision that this will be the law of the land, there's still no guarantee in America that it will be accepted or respected, let alone enforced. So we have to do the work as citizens to make those assurances. We can't count on a signed document by a president as powerful as he or she may be. We have to do the work. We have to fight. We have to insist. So Juneteenth should be a reminder of our need to be united, vigilant, and ready to do what is necessary to assure that our freedoms are protected. Everyone benefits when everyone is involved. If I can indulge for a moment and talk to you a little bit about WOW, the organization I'm representing. We are a 5-year-old nonprofit group composed of 162 women from various backgrounds, races, professions, and socioeconomic levels. Our mission is to empower women so they can influence change that improves the quality of life for their families and for the community. We focus on service in the areas of education, advocacy, and building partnerships with other groups like Move the Mindset, 100 Black Men, the NAACP, and other organizations who are trying to do good and make a difference for everybody, but in particularly for those who are marginalized and left out. Women of wisdom, and some of us have our pens, wow, you'll see that. We think we're awesome, we think we're wow, but it stands for Women of Wisdom because all of us have wisdom, all 162. We all have stories to tell. And as an elder in the room, I encourage you to tell your stories to your children. In the old days, many of us didn't know how to read and write, but our culture persisted and things were passed on through storytelling. We have kind of lost that art. Grandparents, great-grandparents, even parents, tell your children stories, read to them, give them something besides food and water and shelter and clothes and things like that. Give them something of sustenance that will feed them intellectually and emotionally. So share your stories. One of the things that WOW does is we meet once a month. We have a speaker, and we want someone who can talk to us about what they do in the community. But you know what we really enjoy? We enjoy listening to their personal stories. I grew up in Vise, a couple of blocks from Holy Rosary. I went to an all-Black school, Paulboro School, from first grade through 12th grade. Had the best teachers on the planet. They happened to be African American, but they loved us, they challenged us, they supported us, they kept us, and they used corporal punishment. And I want to say that sometimes our kids need to be pulled by the collar and checked so that they can, more than that sometimes. And it's unfortunate the teachers' hands are tied. They can't have power and authority in their classrooms. They're told what to do, when to do, how to do, and they're not allowed to reach kids individually in the way that they need to be reached. And so God bless teachers, because we all benefit from teachers. No matter what your profession, whatever you do, wherever you come from, a teacher has had an impact on your life. So thank you. Are there any teachers in the room? Educators? God bless you guys. Thank you. We need you, and we will fight to support you in every way that we can. Advocacy, that's another role that WOW takes seriously. We have begun in the last few years to track what's going on with our boards and commissions in Lafayette. That's where policies are made. That's where issues are discussed and decisions are made to impact the community in whatever way it's going to be impacted. So we want to make sure that every board, every commission, every committee that has the power to impact you as a citizen has representation from women, has representation from people of color, has representation from people who think differently than us. It takes all of us sitting at the table, hashing it out, and coming to a decision that is hopefully in the best interest of the community. So, and in the research that we've done looking at those boards and commissions, Lafayette has a ways to go because they have predominantly been led by white males. I don't know them personally, and no offense to them, but they don't represent the interest of the entire community. The community needs to look kind of like what I'm looking at in the audience out here. Women, people of color, men, the disabled, those who are marginalized, those who come from just a variety of different backgrounds, and we want that. So we're doing our part as a group of women. We're going to insist that women be a part of these boards and commissions because they operate under the radar. You don't read about them every day, but they're the cornerstone of what's happening in terms of policy and law and things that come down. And you'll say, well, when did that happen? Well, a board made a decision, and there are lots of issues out there now, like a library on the north side. Who would think that would be controversial to have a library? But so that your kids can read and have an environment that's just for learning and growing and encouraging each other in a positive way. Why do we always look to certain communities just to build prisons and areas that restrict growth and restrict intellect and restrict the kinds of productive things that we need to be doing for, especially for young people? That has to stop. That cannot happen. And I'm not running for public office. I'm too old and too honorary. But we have some women, and I'm looking at one of them as I look at Amy, and I don't know if there are any others in here. As was said earlier, get out, support the candidate of your choice, and vote. If you don't vote, shame on you. And I would be happy to take you in the corner and have a good little conversation with you like your grandma did when you're doing wrong. You have to do your part. And so I ask you to do that. The other, the other things that WOW does is we, in partnership rather, with the Lafayette Public School System, under the umbrella of Love Our Schools, we have organized what's called a CAFE, Community and Family Engagement. We have 4 public schools that have been identified: J.W. Fall, Lafayette Middle, Carencro High, and Northside High, and 1 Catholic school, Holy Family Catholic Schools. Those schools need added support. So we have teams, volunteer teams, working with the principal and administrators at each school to target 3 critical issues that the system has identified. We've got to decrease truancy. We've got to get our kids up and at school every day. And whatever you can do to help, especially those young moms who may be working and have maybe a couple of jobs and are kind of leading the effort on the home front alone, try to see what you can do to offer help. When you see kids not in school, when you see them on the street, in the old days, we would interfere. We'd get in people's business. We would say, Johnny, why aren't you at school? Susie, what are you doing at home at 10 o'clock in the morning? I know we live in scary times, but we have got to find the courage to reach out and help those. When we see people drowning, you can't just stand on the shore with your arms crossed and say, oh, well, they should have known better. We don't always know better. We need help, and many of us don't know how to ask for it. So even if you make a mistake, trying to do the right thing and try to help, and if you're cut off or admonished, then I guess you have to back off. But make the effort to help, especially our children. That is our future. We have to invest in them. We have to give them love, balanced with discipline, and dreams. Our kids don't dream. I find that J.W. Fall, those little innocent, wonderful children with all the hopes and dreams and innocence that life brings to them, by the time they're in upper level middle school or high school, those dreams, I don't know what happened to them. They've lost the sense of themselves. They've lost that energy, that positive outlook on life, and they get caught up. And we see that. I'm so sick of seeing the news every day showing young black men arrested, having been involved in shooting. And it's like, these are somebody's children. These are people who had dreams, who were trying to do the right thing. But where did we go wrong? Did we just say, oh, well, that's them, this is somebody's kid. I would want somebody to take care of my child, even if I couldn't take care of my child myself. So please, let's do our part. We're losing a generation, and we cannot afford to. The next thing that WOW is doing is we've created a series called Connections. We want to connect to our community, the leadership in the community. We want to connect to corporations in the community, and we want to connect to culture in the community. What we've been doing is contacting the mayors and the leaders of city government in our area. We started with Lafayette, and I thought I saw Carlos. Thanks to Carlos, wherever he was, to help us. Whether you agree or disagree with the political perspective of someone doesn't matter. We still have to find a way to work with everybody. I don't have to like a mayor, a senator, and I'm not talking about you, Senator Boudreaux. I like you. We don't have to like them, but we've got to work with people. We've got to be respectful, and we've got to be able to sit across the table intelligently. But we've got to know what we want. And y'all, we can't wait for people to tell us what the plan is. We have to come to the table with something. We have a plan. We met with neighbors or friends, and this is an issue in our community. Mayor, senator, representative, school board member. This is what we need. Can you help us? So I ask you to get involved and connect. Without connecting, it's really hard. You can knock on the door and get a seat at the table, but if you don't know who's inside, how are you going to get in it? You don't even know what door to knock on. You don't know where the table is. So it's important that we find that out and get that done. So one of the things WOW is doing, our group of, we're 162 women, diverse, all different perspectives, but our common theme is we want Lafayette to be a better place for all, for everybody. Couple of final things. We toured the governor's mansion. We do that once a year. We're going to see what governor ends up in the mansion after this next election cycle. And we're going to go there and we're going to say, okay, governor, and well, I'm not going to share my personal thing. That would be inappropriate, but you know who I'm talking about. And I'm saying we need to vote. We need to get out there, and we need to put people who share our interests in office. And we need to go talk to them and stay in touch, because the work really begins after you vote. Partnerships, that's the other thing we're doing. WOW wants to align itself in partnership with groups like this and other groups who are doing things in the community to make a difference. We're not here to make a sales pitch. We're not here to get a pat on the back. We're here to make a difference. And so I hope that you will support us and continue to support other agencies and organizations in our community who are doing good work. I hope that this celebration of Juneteenth allows us to reflect on this historic social justice event that happened in Texas. Hopefully we will be motivated to have conversations with each other that help create and expand opportunities for empowerment and engagement, so that old barriers, the same old barriers, can be dismantled forever. Our forefathers and foremothers sacrificed for us. All they had after slavery was their faith and a common cause. They pursued education and embraced the entrepreneurial spirit in pursuit of the American dream for their families, in spite of overwhelming efforts to deny them. We must continue to honor past generations, but our larger responsibility is to do our part. Those of you, especially those of you who raised your hands, who went to multiple Juneteenth events, I hope that you're sitting here with a vision for what you as an individual are going to do to make a difference. Who are you going to align with? None of us can do it by ourselves. What are you committed to? What is your cause? Those of you who have children, what are you telling and teaching and showing your children? If it's not good, change it. If you need help, ask for it. If you feel like you're down and out, look around this room and identify what looks like somebody you can approach and say, can you help me? I need to talk to somebody privately. But we all have gifts. Let's use them to give back to our community. Take care. Thanks for inviting me, and happy Juneteenth, everybody. Thank you.